Happy Independence Day. The fireworks in this video I'm providing through special effect, but the sounds you're hearing of fireworks are actually what's going on out in our neighborhood right now. This is being detonated. I live in Washington, and they have, since we're a damp state, we have pretty lenient firework laws. I thought I would just do a little bit of a historical video this time, dealing with some aspects about Independence Day that most people don't know. So first of all, when we think about Independence Day, of course, it's the Stars and Stripes Forever, the honoring of everyone puts out their flags. And what is somewhat intriguing about that is that the flags have actually, of course, changed over the years. The original flag that was accepted in the colonies, of course, is the red and white stripes with the circle of 13 stars representing the original 13 colonies. Recently came into some controversy from ignorant buffoons, but other than that, it was a flag for quite some time. It wasn't until about 1818 that the flag itself was actually updated. And the current flag that we use today, of course, that has 50 stars, didn't actually happen until was adopted on July 4th of 1960. And it was designed by a young high school um, student. And, obviously because you had to have 50 states, and when Alaska and Hawaii, of course, which in the late 50s came in, then it became the official flag of the United States now. Now, something else interesting in history, there's some interesting quirks on on Independence Day. And it could be coincidence, or it might just be or some weird fate. But of course, we've had 3 American presidents that have died on the 4th of July. The last one that passed away was James Monroe, and he died in 1861. Of course, he was president of the United States, considered one of the founding fathers. But the most intriguing one, of course, is that on July 4th of 1826, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, who had both been presidents, who had been rivals their whole lives, and two of the definite founding fathers of the United States, they both died on the same day. Uh, First of all, technically, the 4th of July is the time that has been enshrined as Independence Day, but the Continental Congress, technically the Second Continental Congress, met on June 2nd, and to approve the Declaration of Independence. There was some last work on it, and they actually didn't get it thoroughly approved until the 4th of July. It's interesting that John Adams, again, we mentioned, is one of the first. He had always thought that the memorial would have actually been on July the 2nd when they started it, rather than when it actually was done. And there's some arguments on who signed in the end, because some of them weren't there and all that. There's a lot of historical back and forth on it, but it ended up being the 4th of July. Now, of course, right now, as you can tell, listening in the background, we have fireworks. And most people think, fireworks are part of the tradition, and they do go very, very, very far back. In 1777, the Pennsylvania Evening Post had an article and talking about the gun salutes and fireworks that were done in honor of Independence Day. And bonfires were also done to commemorate it. Cannon salutes, again, were very common. And when you get right, cannons are just explosions. When you get right down to it, generally, of course, you load them without the ball, unless you can by waste the cannonballs. You can get the same effect just from the blast. And on the first Independence Day, it was honored by the firing of 13 cannons to reflect, of course, each of the 13 original colonies that became the original states. Now, in modern times, when you think about, one of the things that's strange about the 4th of July, it is the biggest day of the year for people for hot dogs. More hot dogs are eaten on the 4th of July than any other day in the year. And it's estimates that there, over 150 million are eaten during the holiday. That's think about hot dogs are about 6 inches long, 150 million of them would reach across the United States. And of course, we have the annual hot dog eating contest. And someone, the last champion, recently defended himself and consumed a conspicuous amount of hot dogs, an amount that just makes me ill to even think about it. Now, for most people, of course, which I found today because I tried to go a couple of places and they were closed, the 4th of July is, it's a beautiful day, and most people don't work on the 4th of July. It's a national holiday. But it wasn't until 1870 that Congress made Independence Day an official unpaid national holiday. And it wasn't until 1938 that Congress actually made it a federal paid holiday. So until that point, you're on your own for Independence Day. You could take it off, and you didn't have to pay for that. You weren't going to get paid for it. Now, when you're looking at Independence Day, we're talking about the signing, of course, the Declaration of Independence, and say all the Americans that signed the Declaration of Independence. Well, it is interesting that 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence, but 8 of them were born in England. They were born in Great Britain. And so there's a direct connection right there. The Liberty Bell, of course, is one of the symbols of the independence of America. Of course, cracked from its ringing and all that in Philadelphia, but it was actually cast in a foundry in Britain because we're interconnected with the British even today. I mean, with President Trump, not long ago, got back from visiting with the British, and even with all the differences between England and the United States now, there's still a bond that goes back to our independence, to our common heritage. So I remember that in 1976, of course, was the bicentennial. I was in high school at the time, and my high school were the Patriots, the Hoover Patriots, and they actually dressed as in Minutemen type of costumes, three-cornered hats. There was a marching band that we were in, and we actually that band. Though I'd been in the band, but I wanted to I transferred out of band and into choir because there were a lot more cute girls in choir than there were in band. And so I ended up going with the choir instead of the band to Washington, D.C. for the bicentennial. And it was very interesting, and got to we actually performed on the steps of Congress. We sang in front of the Lincoln Memorial. We performed at the Washington Cathedral, and that was a big show going on during that time, of course, because it's 4th of July, and we were there visiting as a bunch of high schoolers. It was a very interesting time for me. And I would tell more about it, but I don't want to get myself in trouble on some of the things I did while I was there, because the drinking age there is 18 and I was 17 at the time, and I looked old for my age, but we probably don't want to get into the story too deeply. But having said that, Independence Day is a time when all Americans should be pulling together. And to some extent they are, and I'm glad about that. There's a big celebration going on right now, though it's pretty much over by now since I'm West Coast and it was happening on the East Coast, in Washington, D.C. That was a big parade that involved military hardware and honoring the military forces and the people of the United States. It was honoring our independence and the people of this country. Now, the media has made it sound like it's not Independence Day, it's Donald Trump Day, but of course the media are unhinged and crazy, and you really have to give them only the level of credence that they actually deserve. But it's a good time for people to be pulling together. I think the most fascinating thing about it is that you have people protesting in Washington against this parade, not even considering the historical aspects that there were tanks all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue for FDR's inauguration. There were tanks and there were nuclear missiles on the streets being shown in Washington, D.C. during Eisenhower's administration. Kennedy had military personnel. Flyovers are common in almost every one of these. It's just that you have unhinged people that hate Donald Trump. But I would tell to them, from me personally, from a historical point of view, is you should really be pleased with the fact that you're allowed to be doing this, because you're in this great nation that allows you to have your freedom, that allows you to protest even against the president of the United States, even against the government. As long as you're doing it in a peaceful manner, you have the freedom to do that. The right to assembly is guaranteed. Freedom of speech. So it's kind of an interesting twist that you got people who seem to be somewhat anti-American. I know this is a phrase that people don't always like to use, but I do basically do think that people need to think about that, because the are you in favor of the founding of this nation? Are you in favor of our constitutional government? Are you opposed to it? And therein lies the kind of the problem I'm dealing with right now. These people are in many ways being against the precepts of this country, the freedoms that they're allowed to have, that we're seeing here, and yet the only reason they have them is because they live in this great nation that has its freedoms. So my opinion is, enjoy those freedoms and happy Independence Day.
If you wish to join the quest for knowledge, the battle for truth, please hit the like button, recommend my channel to others, and of course, subscribe. Thank you kindly.